I found this quote from C.S. Lewis from his very well-known book, Mere Christianity.
Yeah.
And he says, have you ever thought about why the world has gone so desperately wrong? And he says, well, no doubt here we ask a question to which human beings cannot give an answer with any certainty. However, a reasonable and traditional guess based on our experience of going wrong can however, be offered. And he says, the moment that you have self at all, there is the possibility of putting yourself first, wanting to be the center, wanting to be God, in fact. And that was the sin of Satan, and that was the sin he taught the human race. Some people think the fall of man had something to do with sex, but that is a mistake. While Satan put into the heads of our remote ancestors the idea that we could be like gods and could set themselves up on their own as if they had created themselves and be their own masters and invent some sort of happiness for themselves outside of God, apart from God. And as C.S. Lewis says, and I think if we look at history, and out of that hopeless attempt has come nearly all that we call human history. Money, poverty, ambition, war, prostitution, classes, empires, slavery, the long, terrible story of man trying to find, and this is the kicker, something other than God, which will make him happy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff.
That's a powerful setup to these chapters that we approach, and probably time to go, hey church, we're at week 2 of our podcast and we are sitting down not with C.S. Lewis, but with Rob Gratton himself, great member of our church. You would have heard him leading communion and tithe talks. You may have encountered him doing Alpha. Rob and Tina really pioneered Alpha in the church and just seeing some incredible fruit from that. And also maybe your kids go to Mandurah Baptist College and Rob's been the primary school principal there for a long time now. How many years?
Oh, I think I'm in my 16th year.
16 years. So there's so much we could talk about: longevity, leadership, all these things, but we're talking about Genesis.
That's right.
This morning. And as you've sort of unpacked in that C.S. Lewis quote, that's really what's happening, isn't it, in this chapter? But give us, if you will, just a bit of a synopsis of chapter 3 specifically, but what's happening around it.
Yeah, so I guess it comes at a point in Genesis where, God's established the world. He's made this incredible world and he's placed Adam and Eve into the garden, the absolute pinnacle of his creation. Yeah. And he, in a sense, he trusts them. He trusts them with everything that he's given, the resources, the environment, and he's right there with them. His presence, he walks with them. Yeah. And he just gives them one rule: don't eat from the tree of good and knowledge. Yeah. Just the one rule. Yeah. That would be nice just to have one rule, wouldn't it, in our lives?
Wouldn't it?
So he gives them that one rule, and I guess I see it as it came down to trust. And there was, I guess I look at it like this, there was actually no reason given that Adam and Eve could not trust God. Yeah, yeah. And that to me, and I think of a quote from Stephen R. Covey Jr., who basically said, everything moves at the speed of trust. And how important is that in life, in relationships? Totally. Everything. Totally. And so there they are, they're in the garden, they're in this incredible world, everything they need is there. It's perfect, basically. Yeah. And along comes the serpent and it all changes. Yeah. And the opportunity, I think we read in one of the books, freedom actually can lead towards bondage. That's right. Exactly right. Yeah. At least our worldly, if you like, understanding of freedom, the absence of all restraints. That's right. Is actually the biggest restraint of all. And I've heard it said once before that freedom is really the existence of the right restraints. That's right. The correct boundaries. Yeah. And I think as humans, we get that wrong. Yeah. It's very natural to look to ourselves and want to, I guess, give us or ourselves what we feel will make us happy and satisfied. And that, I guess, is the dilemma here.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you read in chapter 3 in the first, I've been focusing mostly on the first 13 verses.
Yeah.
The thing that counts against us or is in opposition to us, of course, is the work of Satan. He appears in the form of the serpent, tempts Eve.
Yeah.
She falls for it.
Yeah.
And he's very sly and he's very shrewd, as the Bible says. She falls for it, sins, Adam sins.
Yep.
And in a sense, things go downhill from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we unpack a little bit further what was the temptation that Satan sort of used? What string was he pulling on of humanity to cause that fall?
Yeah. One guy that I read, he talks about desire, how God made us desiring creatures.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
To desire food, intimacy, water, sex, power, etc. In the right ways.
Yeah.
Under God's plan. And
again, within those boundaries, not with total abandonment.
Exactly. Is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And here's a guy called Thomas Tarrant. Quite an incredible backstory, which I can't go into now.
Yeah.
But he was actually the president of the C.S. Lewis Institute for quite a while. You know, whom I'm a fan of, kind of thing. And John Stott, by the way.
I love John Stott.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, if you look at desire, God gives us this for a reason, but we need to be fulfilling those desires from His will and His way and His teachings.
Yeah.
And he writes this. So Thomas Tarrant, he says, God created humanity as desiring creatures. His intention in doing so was that our desire would actually be focused on Him and His will.
Yeah.
For Him to be the freely chosen supreme love and desire of our hearts.
Yeah.
And the sole object of our worship, and for His will to be our will. And I think really that came down to where Eve's in the garden, the fruit looks great of the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
And the serpent's there and just whispering, shrewdly convincing her, throwing half-truths.
Playing that desire. Doesn't that fruit look good?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't it be good to experience it?
Yeah.
Which, other writers have called it that lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, which is that desire that you're talking about. But and it's really helpful to have that perspective, I think, Rob, because we can often think that desire is evil, but the desire in and of itself is not evil.
That's
it just
right.
needs to come under the lordship of Christ.
Of God and Christ, exactly right.
And in that place, it's beautiful. It's how He created us.
That's right.
That's
we were
powerful.
made to, again, be desiring creatures, but to have that desire fulfilled and provided within the context and the will of God. And that's the thing that, it's so easy to miss that when we have all the distractions of this worldly world around us.
And I heard it spoken about as well of the temptation often begins in trivia.
Yes.
The trivial, this wasn't a big issue. It's the one boundary. But why not?
Yeah,
why
that's
not
right.
that little thing? And he sort of poses those questions.
That's right.
Do you think God really?
Did He really say that? As if to say, oh, hang on. He's throwing a seed of doubt into Eve's mind. Yeah. And we're all susceptible to it, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And we've
all fallen for it.
We have. We all fallen. I'll put my hand up.
Yeah.
That's why I need Jesus.
Yeah.
So there's that deceiver, that deception. It's a subtle process that Satan used then and still uses us just to bring us slowly, bit by bit, and our eyes are off where they should be, and we start filling up our life, our real desires with all the garbage that the world so easily offers. And so that, if you go back to Genesis, that trust, that amazing trust that was there was no, as I said earlier, no reason that we could not or should not trust God. And along comes the serpent, takes Eve away, so to speak, tempts her away. She sins, Adam sins, and suddenly that trust is broken.
Yeah.
But then soon there's going to be some good news.
Yeah, yeah. And that's probably a good spot to finish up. I mean, because the good news is coming and it's not all falling apart. It fell apart.
That's right.
But I think whenever we read these stories, the end result shouldn't be, oh man, humans are bad.
Yeah.
We're like, I'm ruined. It's actually, no, we can continue to trust
That's
God.
right.
He's compassionate. He's merciful.
Yep.
And the coming story, or really the whole rest of the story of Genesis, reveals that truth.
That's right, yeah.
So good.
It reveals the path to, I guess you could call it, to redemption, restoration, and ultimately through Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's the amazing, wonderful thing about God, about the story of God in the Scriptures. And, the reality is there's hints right in that chapter about how God starts reaching out.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah.
Well,
I encourage you, church, to study through it and discover those hints and journey through that together. Thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you so much for preaching on Sunday.
No worries. I'll look forward to that.
Yeah, because this is recorded before you preach, but they'll see it after you preach.
That's right.
I'm going to prophesy right now and say, Rob, Sunday, what a great message.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
No problem at all. Happy to be here.